Host the ultimate backyard barbecue with Whole Foods Market. It's the hot grill summer event through July 16th with sizzling sales on no antibiotics ever boneless beef ribeye steak and beef New York strip steak. Plus, check out sales on sustainable wild-caught Alaska sockeye salmon, organic strawberries, and more. In a hurry? Choose grab-and-go favorites like picnic salads and sushi, plus plenty of cooler-friendly beverages. Make it a hot grill summer at Whole Foods Market.
This episode is brought to you by Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. In breaking news, leading scientists worldwide are conducting experiments to determine if Reese's Peanut Butter Cups are the perfect combination of peanut butter and chocolate. However, it appears the study was inconclusive, as the scientists couldn't help but eat all the Reese's. Because when you want something sweet, you can't do better than Reese's. Find Reese's now at a store near you.
Matt, I have a question for you.
You know what? No, I have a question for you. How did you find this?
This was that before, basically every time we finish an album or we're about to finish an album, I comb through Al's IMDb page and his Wikipedia pages and look at his television and filmography and try to find anything that's not him doing a live performance that involves him acting in some way. And I saw that he was in 3 episodes of some show that I've never heard of called The Eddie Files.
I would say, speaking of Wikipedia, this show doesn't even have a Wikipedia page.
No Wikipedia page.
That is how obscure this show is.
The only thing I could find about this show was an IMDb plot description written by a guy on IMDb named The Dude. That says...
sorry, go ahead, you go.
And he wrote... The Eddie Files features an East Harlem teacher, Kay Tover, and her intuitive approach to teaching mathematics. The series follows Eddie, a fictional student in her class, as he investigates the world of careers by meeting real people in their real jobs. Students discover the application of math concepts in the real world. So it was like this kind of like Sesame Street-esque type show. I don't think it's nearly as good or as interesting as the other shows it's trying to be, right? Because I think I told you it's like Sesame Street and Bill Nye, but like where its strengths are is like his fantasy versions of things, which is where Al shows up. Al is basically exclusively in his fantasy sequences. I think that the approach of like talking to real life people about how mathematics is utilized in their job is fascinating. And it's something that like Mr. Rogers was really good at. Mr. Rogers was great at having these like interesting conversations with real people.
Yeah.
This show just doesn't do it well, unfortunately. And I think that's why it lasted like 16 episodes and no one really remembers it.
Yeah.
But
I was going to say, in terms of the impact of the show, I think one of the most telling things is if you go to the IMDb for it, the thumbnail image, instead of a poster or anything even with the name, it's just a picture of Al's face. Like Al being on this show, I think is maybe the only reason anybody still remembers that it exists.
Yeah.
But then even when you search for that, like this is maybe the most obscure thing we have ever talked about on this show.
It's either this or that Weird Al's Guide to the Grammys thing that was like aired one time ever. But
it was aired one time, but it was connected to the Grammys, which
true.
was at least something people have heard of. I mean, this is like, I actually have, this is a great one because I have like both no notes and yet so many questions. Like
so many questions.
Like, did you notice in the credits that it says that this show was funded by like the Department of Education? Like it's a government funded show.
Yep.
And I know public television is generally like it's funded by the public. That's the whole point of it. Like there's some grants involved in that sort of thing. But like this, one episode said it was funded by the Department of Education. And then another one said, this episode funded by the U.S. Department of Energy.
Yeah, no,
it's like, what is this?
It is a wild show. So Al showed up in 3 episodes. Episode 3, episode 4, and episode 15. Episode 15 is probably his starring role, so we'll get to that last. Episode 3, Polygons, is my favorite of the Al segments by a mile. And in this one, he's talking about how, I guess the concept is the teacher says to go out into the world and see how many polygons you see. And he's blown away by how many things are polygons. And he writes a report called The Invasion of the Polygons. And someone that he's talking to says, sounds more like a movie to me. And then we get this pitch perfect parody of like a 50s sci-fi movie trailer that is so funny. Like, I will not think about the Eddie Files past this episode, but I might try to show people this Invasion of the Polygon segment because it's like a guy running through a dark alley and then it's like the shadow of a rectangle is coming towards him. Or my favorite, the woman in the pool, and you just see it like a shark fin just kind of cruising in the water. But Al's appearance is a man being interrogated about the polygons, and she goes, tell me what it was. Was it a rhombus or a trapezoid? And he goes, I don't know. There was 4 sides.
It had 4 sides. I don't know. And he's just hysterically crying. And then it says, funded by the U.S. Department of Energy. And you're just like, what in the world? It's so strange.
But that was a delight.
That is great. It's a great little like weird bit of sketch comedy hidden in this show. Yeah.
Now, did you watch the full episodes, or did you just follow my timestamps on this one?
I did not watch the full episodes. I watched more of, I guess it's the last episode, which is the cake one.
Yeah, the charts.
We're not there yet.
Charts,
yeah, okay.
we're not
I
there
watched
yet.
most of that one. But this, I did notice, just again, I had to observe like an episode about polygons, and they're talking about geometry and shapes and stuff. And I'm starting to get the sense of like what this is, like practical real life applications. Yeah. And they talked to one of the structural engineers at Trump Tower.
Yep. Boy, did they.
I scanned through it just because I had to make sure that Donald Trump was not in it, and he's not. Donald Trump's not taking time out to do children's educational television.
Listen, from what I understand, I don't know how true this is, but the story I've always heard about Donald Trump's infamous appearance in Home Alone 2
yes,
was that one of the requirements to film at Trump's Tower was that he had to have an appearance in every single thing that was filmed in it.
Yep.
And then it was up to the editor's discretion if they kept it. And Home Alone 2 just happened to be the one time that they're like, let's keep it. So it's possible he filmed something for this.
I guess it's possible, or maybe he just was like, this is not for profit children's television. Pass.
Yeah, pass.
Not interested.
Al's shortest appearance actually, no, that was the shortest appearance, was Polygons. But episode 4, we get a very quick Al scene as well. For Fractions, he shows up as a waiter in Eddie's dream, offering him I believe I wrote this down correctly, a black olives, anchovies, and pepperoni pizza.
Black olive, anchovy, and extra pepperoni.
Extra pepperoni.
Extra pepperoni, important distinction, not just a regular amount of pepperoni.
And then he asks if he wants his chocolate milkshake now or later. Which I have some mixed feelings on this because I'm not a black olives nor an anchovies man, and I'm also not like, if I'm gonna put a meat on a pizza, I don't think it's pepperoni for me anymore. I'm done with the pepperoni. I'm a sausage or bacon man if I'm gonna put a meat on the pizza.
That's fair. If we're talking about a child's fantasy pizza,
anchovies is insane to me.
Anchovy black olive. That is an adult palate.
Yeah. Have they ever hung out with a child when they were writing this episode?
Yeah. Hey, Department of Energy.
Pay
attention.
So, I mean, this is me pulling from the 7 minutes I may have dedicated to watching the show. Mm-hmm. So I could be totally wrong. But I like the concept that we never see Eddie. That Eddie is just the POV of the audience.
We didn't talk about that, but yes, in the one episode I watched a lot of, you never see Eddie. It is as if the show is shot through the eyes of this kid who's learning about the world. So it's kind of cool, and also at moments very disconcerting, where characters are talking and all of a sudden they just look right down the barrel of the camera, and it's just like, what do you think? Staring at you, it's like, it's very I'm sure a kid would like it. I found it very disconcerting.
Well, no, my takeaway was honestly like, I think that the Eddie Files is a good concept that's poorly executed. That it doesn't have, when we think of stuff like Sesame Street, when we think of stuff like Mr. Rogers, when we think of stuff like Bill Nye, even when we think about, we're getting to the point where we're going to cover all the episodes of the Weird Al show, like these are shows, and not that the Weird Al show was educational in any way, but like these are shows that are clearly written from people like Fred Rogers, Jim Henson, like Bill Nye, Al Yankovic, people who really understand a child's mind and a child's focus and like what is entertaining. And like, that's why as an adult, you can sit and watch Sesame Street with your child and it's captivating to the child and you're having a good time while watching it. Or like
Yes.
Mr. Rogers has like this very unique way of talking to a child that just feels so like welcoming and nice. And Bill Nye had this great, crazy energy. I mean, Bill Nye was up against Beekman's World. And like, it's kind of in that same vein as when you compare like Armageddon to Deep Impact, where it's like both shows similar concept, wildly different approaches to that concept. And while I liked both of them at the time, I think the reason why Bill Nye is so held up as this great achievement where like Beekman's World is like this, like, hey, you guys remember watching this show? Is that like Bill Nye really found that great edutainment balance where I don't remember a damn thing I learned on Beekman's World, just that it was a weird, funny show that had science tied to it. And I think that that's like the idea of this is great.
Yeah.
I can't imagine this being on television. This feels like when I was a kid, they made us watch a thing called The Voyage of the Mimi in school, which starred a young Ben Affleck that was like to teach us about like the ocean. And apparently it aired on some channels. I can't imagine that. Like, I'm like, I don't know who was tuning in for this.
Right.
That's what this feels like. Like, these were designed specifically to show in a math class for the students, like to introduce them to the concepts of fractions before you started teaching the lesson on fractions. Like,
yeah, but it's they're just, again, same with these, like, I get the idea in principle, but the idea of this being shown, it just is a little too weird.
The execution's
and
off.
not straight enough. Yeah. I'm still mystified. Like, literally, as you're talking, I'm kind of trying to like do deeper research on this. There's so little information about this show. The one thing I did find in terms of other like notable people on it, apparently there's an episode or two that features Jerry Stiller.
okay.
Classic, legendary.
Well,
and then
we're about to get into it with this last one because, I mean, I forget the actor's name, but the subway ghost from Ghost is in the episode we're about to talk about with Al.
Vincent Schiavelli, I think is the pronunciation of the last name. Vincent Schiavelli, who is, if you don't know that name, you have definitely seen him. He's a notable like character actor.
He is a not attractive man that tends to play. It's weird to see him on a kid's show because like my connection with him, like I said, is the subway ghost in Ghost, or he's like the heroin addict kids show host in Death to Smoochie, which is probably my favorite role that he's ever done. Death to Smoochie, just side note, great, almost seemingly forgotten comedy film from the 90s, 2000s.
I need to revisit that one.
About as dark as a dark comedy can get.
Yeah, I saw that as a kid and I did not get it. Like that just, I went over my head. I feel like I would appreciate it more now. And then there's just the only other notable name I see on this show is, on one episode, Amy Jo Johnson.
Oh.
The original Pink Ranger.
And this would have been, this is definitely not a before she was famous. If this is 95, this would have been at the peak of Power Rangers power. So
it absolutely would have been at the peak of Power Rangers. And she did, she went for it. Probably same as Al. Just like, oh, this is a thing for kids, educational for kids. Sure, why not?
Perfect.
Got to give it up. Amy Jo Johnson.
Great.
The first childhood crush of many, including me.
And
very early.
And probably one of the least problematic of the early Power Rangers.
Got to give it up. Got to give it up. She seems
didn't
rock
murder
solid.
Anybody. Didn't start selling MAGA stuff on
I haven't
their
done
website.
I haven't done a deep background search, but I feel like every time I hear her mentioned, it's because she's actively doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So nice job, Amy Jo Johnson.
The most recent thing I remember was her calling out the original Red Ranger because he's selling a lot of like super offensive right-wing stuff on his website now. And she's just like, well, he's no friend of mine. And I was like, good for you, Amy Jo.
I know, right?
Host the ultimate backyard barbecue with Whole Foods Market. It's the hot grill summer event through July 16th with sizzling sales on no antibiotics ever boneless beef ribeye steak and beef New York strip steak. Plus, check out sales on sustainable wild-caught Alaska sockeye salmon, organic strawberries, and more. In a hurry? Choose grab-and-go favorites like picnic salads and sushi, plus plenty of cooler-friendly beverages. Make it a hot grill summer at Whole Foods Market.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
91 Donkey Lane is a magical apartment complex that contains immense power but lacks intelligent inhabitants.
What is happening?
I'm getting texts.
Why are we getting a lot of texts?
People found out what we did.
Oh, dividing Mike Myers into an infinite amount of tiny Mike Myers?
Listen to 91 Donkey Lane for free on Spotify or your favorite podcasting app. More at 91donkeylane.com. See you there, you donkeys.
Episode 15, Charts. This is where Al really gets to stretch his acting bone. And let me tell you, folks, if you, like me, find Al eating food weirdly appealing for reasons that don't make sense, is this the episode for you? Because most of this episode, Al is just eating food and making faces that say that this is the best thing he's ever eaten in his entire life. But he plays the food critic, Bones McDuff.
Bones McDuff, acclaimed food critic.
So let me ask you a question, because there was a moment. So the way that this episode starts off, Eddie says, this is the story of the food critic, Bones McDuff. And it shows Al sitting at a table, and he's slightly rude to the waitress, who asks, like, is there anything else I can get you? And he says, like, well, what normally comes after the main course? And she's like, oh, yes, your dessert. And they go into the kitchen. She's like, we need the desserts. And then they put these desserts in front of a dog. And there was a split second where I thought, now that's a funny bit that we think Al's the food critic named Bones McDuff, but it's actually this dog named Bones McDuff. Not the case. It's just that this bulldog apparently has the palate of a fine chef, a gourmet chef. So they put all the food in front of him, and whichever one he eats, they know that that is the best dessert that they have in that kitchen to serve the actual food critic, who just is in heaven. He literally eats it and says, heavenly, how do you... does a thing that food critics do not do, which is literally say, another 4-star review from me. Like, I don't think you're supposed to tell them how they did until the paper comes out.
So yes, this restaurant seemingly their entire business model is if the dog likes it, it's the best food available. And Al, or I should say Bones McDuff, confirms this. Worth noting, the dish that the dog decides is the dessert worth running with is, of course, the Von Frugel Noodle Strudel.
Yes.
Is the name of this dish. And when the dog eats it, it's a big bulldog that is doing this. And one of the chefs in the back gets so excited and he goes, this poodle loves our noodle strudel. And then the other guy has to be like, it's not a poodle, it's a bulldog. Considering
there is
it's
some
Al,
good jokes here and there on this.
I know. Considering it's Al, the fact that they threw in a poodle reference, I have no idea if that was intentional or not, but or if it's just a dumb. I just that cracked me up so much that they felt the need to say poodle, even though it's obviously not a poodle. But yeah, the Von Frugel Noodle Strudel was great. I wrote down in my notes at this point in the show, because this was the first one I watched, even though it's the last one we're talking about. I wrote down, I'm like, is the dog Eddie?
Yeah.
Like, is Eddie a child? Like, who is this character? Why are they doing this with this dog? I know the dog's not Eddie, but I don't understand what is happening in this place and why. I mean, again, I think the idea, my guess from the adult perspective on the making of this show is like, let's lead with something silly to make the kids laugh, and then they won't realize that we're teaching them stuff later.
Do you think, and I'm asking this question while in my heart knowing that the answer is almost definitely yes. Do you think that they hired Al for this particular episode, and while they were filming it, were just like, hey, while you're here, do you think you could be a waiter real quick for us?
I would hope so for Al. I mean, if Al keeps going back, he is extremely generous because they are, to be fair, 3 very different sets.
Yes.
Maybe he did them separately. Maybe he did this one in one go and then the other 2 were like knocked out in quick succession. I really don't know. I don't know. Especially those other 2 are such short cameos.
They're like 15 to 30 seconds each.
Yeah, he's barely in the show at all. So I have to assume he's not like blocking out a week to fly to Vancouver, wherever they made this thing. I can't imagine that would be the case, but who knows?
So I literally only watched the Al stuff of this episode, so I don't know what happens in the middle, but we get some subplot of this woman who I guess is trying to win a best dessert dish contest. Yes. And Bones McDuff is back as the host and only judge on this eating contest, which is baffling. I wrote down, it is insane to me that he's eating the entire dessert of every plate that's put in front of him. And
anybody
not just
who's ever watched a food competition show, of course the judge can't eat the whole plate. That's insane. Like, Al is eating the amount of food. Like, the people who entered this contest...
The plates that they show, there are at least 20 plates in front of him of desserts that he's eaten up until this point.
It is called the East Harlem Dessert Derby. Yeah. And this is like every single home in East Harlem has submitted a dessert to this competition. And Al has like the amount of plates of food. It is like, it reminded me of the Bruce Bogtrotter scene from Matilda.
Yes.
Like, this man is being forced to eat until he bursts. And then he's got the last dish in front of him and he's like, I can't eat anymore. And the judge is like, oh, you're going to finish.
Well,
you have to.
It's actually probably the hardest I laughed in the entire episode, because the final dish, who is the person that we're hoping will win, is a lima bean mud pie. And the way that it's even said into the microphone, the host of this event, Subway Ghost from Ghost, has so much disdain in his voice for the concept of this. And Al's reaction when he looks at this, because it looks disgusting.
He has a full-on jump scare.
Yeah, he jumps back, and then he looks at the host as if to say, I don't have to eat this, right? It's completely silent. There's no dialogue at all. And the host just gives him a look like, I don't know what to tell you. You have to try it. And Al takes the tiniest bite of it. And it's like, Al, the actor, shines in this moment, because he's eating it and his face says, this is punishing. Yeah. And then he swallows it. And then his face lightens up as it's just like, oh my God, it's actually delicious. It's the best thing I've ever had. Like, and then she wins. And then I immediately turn it off because I'm like, okay, I've seen enough of the Eddie Files.
Again, you said it earlier, but I want to go back to it. Al is trying like 30 desserts, and every single one he tries, he loves.
Yes.
There is not one thing he tastes that he does not have a face of like, oh my God, this is the most delicious thing I've ever had in my life.
Until this plate comes in front of his face.
And then this plate comes in front of his face. It looks terrible. He doesn't want to eat it, but then he takes the most small, like barely can eat it bite. And then on this one, like, also another funny thing, he doesn't process the flavor until he has fully swallowed it. Like, he takes the bite and then chews and swallows, and only after he has swallowed does he actually suddenly change and realize he likes it. But in this one, because he's already gone so big on everything else, this is like, he is making a face like he is like orgasming to the moon. Like, eyes rolled back in his head. It is hilarious. Like, he is about to explode.
Yes.
From this. It's just so ridiculously over the top.
It's so good. It's
the MC cannot believe it when Bones McDuff says that the winner is indeed the lima bean mud pie, because the MC himself, I feel like this is a little bit of a conflict of interest, but the MC presents his own dish to Al for the judging, and it is his strawberry skyscraper souffle.
You know what, Matt? Hold on a second. I have to clarify something.
Uh-oh.
There's no way that Al filmed these all in one trip. I'm looking at his Wikipedia page. Somehow, well, actually, no, maybe it's possible. Here's what it says on Wikipedia. It says Al appeared in 3 episodes of the Eddie Files in 1995 and 1998. The only thing I can think of is one of two things. Somehow this show, I'm going to look this up now, because now I'm on a hunt. Either this show lasted more seasons than either one of us is willing to give it credit for, which sounds insane.
Well, it's not about being willing. It's about the fact that it has been completely lost to time.
Or what I was going to say is the other option, which is that the show got canceled during its initial run, and the last few episodes just didn't see the light of day until many, many years later, which from what I can see is in fact the case. Yes, that they aired 4 episodes in 95, and then the rest became available at a later date.
Way later.
Just because I happened to look at our we have our little board that keeps everything on track, and I'm like, Eddie Files shows up again in 1998? What the heck?
Again, for context of how obscure this show is, there apparently was a baseball pitcher whose name was Eddie Files.
Yep, that's what comes up when you search Eddie Files.
Who made 2 appearances ever in relief for the Philadelphia Athletics in 1908. That has a Wikipedia page. This dude gets a Wikipedia, but this TV show for children that Al was on 3 times is not worthy of a Wikipedia. I mean, I guess kudos to Edward Files, the baseball player.
All right. Well, Matt, I think that's all. I think we've officially talked about the show, the Eddie Files, more than any human being on this planet has discussed.
And yet
Eddie
I have
Files.
one more thing to say.
All right.
I noticed something in the credit. Well, first of all, after Ida wins with her lima bean mud pie, unclear how she wins. I don't get it. Yeah. And also, I don't fully understand what is supposed to make this episode educational. At the end, the kid does the classic, like, I guess I learned that you can't judge a book by its cover.
Which is weird because the episode's called Charts.
I don't get what the charts, I don't understand what they're trying to say. I mean, if just the moral of the story is don't judge a book by its cover, fine. I guess that's fine. Yes, try the lima bean mud pie before you can or dismiss it as being gross. After Al gives Ida the award, he screams at her to give him the recipe. Like, he's like, I need this recipe, you got to give it to me. And he like basically chases her off the stage. And during the closing credits, he... Oh, and one other thing even before that, in the credits, I noted a name and I had to double check and make sure it's right. The score, the interstitial music and stuff for the Eddie Files, the entire series, Steve J.
That's how, that is 100% how Al got roped into this 100%.
Show. Steve J, Al's bass player, won a Peabody Award for his work on the Eddie Files. Which again, has no Wikipedia page and no one has ever heard of it. It is so weird to me. I can't believe how obscure this show is. And then the very last thing, just because I love it as a closing line, during the credits, Al, again, as Bones McDuff, is talking to the audience one last time, and he's talking about, like, he kind of makes a joke about how all the other desserts were bad, which does not make any sense because he loved everything else he tried. But he was like, oh, the lima bean mud pie was the best thing I've ever had. And his closing, like, line is him just saying, like, I'm Bones McDuff, and if it doesn't tickle your taste buds, it's just dessert for your doggy.
Oh, damn, Al. Bones. Crude.
Bones.
Well, here's what I'm going to say. We already did the Mal bag for this episode, for this run of episodes. Mm-hmm. So we won't be doing another one until probably the fall when we finish Bad Hair Day. But if you watched the Eddie Files in any format in the 90s, write to us and let us know. Let us know how you saw the show. Was it something you were shown in school? Was it airing on television somewhere? I am so curious what this show is and how we like the fact that we found it. I literally thought, ooh, we may have to just cancel this episode because I was not sure if it was going to be available anywhere.
Anybody who grew up with this show. Most of it's on YouTube. There is the only other thing I found, there's a website that claims to sell the DVDs of this show. And it is like the entirety of it's a $100 DVD. I don't understand. It says it's in stock. I'm not buying it, but on this website, it says in stock, order now, ships in 24 hours. A $100 Eddie Files DVD. I'm, oh my God. I even looked, that's just disc 1. The Eddie Files complete series available now for sale. $369.95.
Yep. Nope. This is not one that I think I can write off on my tax. So
holy moly.
We're just going to leave it at that. And we'll be back with even more Al goodness next week.
Wow.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.